morning and welcome to another edition of Today with Dr. Wendy. I'm Wendy Patrick and my co-host Larry Dersham and I want to begin by wishing all of our listeners a happy and blessed Easter weekend. It is so exciting to actually face the prospect of going to church this weekend. I know we've opened and closed again, and now we're officially in the red tier, hopefully the orange tier, which means more people inside in a variety of different activities. And whatever you have planned for this Easter weekend, we want to wish you a wonderful time and a healthful celebration of all faiths and whatever you have planned. The weather is beautiful. Not only do we make the joke, as we always do, as we have for the last year, that it's great to be in a city where we can spend all our time outside, we actually are having more and more options legally and health-wise to spend that time inside as well. So as San Diego churches are preparing for a second Eastern Sunday under some sort of pandemic restrictions, albeit much less than last year, it still means that there will be some people worshiping from home, while others will be taking advantage of the opportunity, the luxury, the blessing to actually go to in-person services. Now, Mount Helix, wouldn't you know it, holds the title for the second longest running Easter service in the United States. That's according to the executive director of the Mount Helix Park Foundation, Krista Powers. And Powers explains that the sunrise service attracts more than 2,000 people each year. You know, that's got to be outside. Now, again, like I say, because we're in the red tier, that means churches are allowed to hold worship outdoors and indoors at 25% capacity, with, of course, the safety precautions, masks, social distancing. And again, that's a lot more than last year where we didn't get to worship inside at all. But one of the silver lining segment sort of inspirational tidbits I'll give you in the first half here is we are now planning vacations. And there are an interesting variety and similarity among the types of things people say they want to do. And it used to be the case that when we used to joke about a vacation, we'd say, oh, we want to go and lie on a beach somewhere. I mean, I don't know. I never said that, Larry. You neither, but we're both workaholics. We'd probably have our laptops plugged in somewhere. But
Right.
that used to be what a lot of folks thought sounded like a good time and a good thing to do with their time off. Not so much anymore. Now, post-COVID, after being inside for a year, people are saying, hey, we want to get adventurous. And it's interesting that the list of exciting activities that are now on people's bucket lists to do post-COVID include walking, visiting castles and historic buildings and museums, seeing the northern lights, whale watching, visiting rainforests, visiting theme parks, even though you may or may not be allowed to scream on roller coasters. We talked about that last week. Seeing exotic animals on safari, seeing volcanoes, watching a geyser erupt, zip wire rafting, kayaking. I mean, these are the kinds of things that people now want to do more than ever. This was a very different bucket list than what we saw last year. And Larry, I mean, I think all of those things are on my list. I would ask, what's on yours?
I think if I had a choice, Wendy, it would be surfing and probably in Hawaii. I love those waters where they're crystal clear. You can see all the way to the bottom, the white sand, and you just catch that perfect wave. That would be my dream vacation. But I'll tell you what, as I grow older, things get a little bit, the simple things of life please me a lot too. And I'll just tell you, yesterday we went down to the county administration building by the waterfront, and they have something called the children's pool. And we took my little 4-year-old granddaughter, and she was playing in there, and just to watch them just run through the really long rectangular pools. I think there's at least 3 of them on this one side, the south side. And she was having so much fun, and to see her laugh and make friends with some other little girls that were playing in there. It's only about 2 inches deep, so there's no chance of anybody drowning. It gives me joy to see her having so much fun, having been cooped up to a certain extent by the lockdowns. So that was
So
beautiful.
great.
Yeah.
You know what's funny, Larry? The 2 items on your bucket list, the surfing in Hawaii, that would have been what you would have said, not just last year, but the last 10 years. And I know this because I've seen you surf on board a cruise ship doing the simulation. And I'll tell you what, you are a great surfer. And so it's interesting that your priorities and your bucket list has remained the same. Although you bring up a really good point that one of the things that the pandemic really did, we'll call it one of the silver lining elements, is make us appreciate the little things, especially joy in others and noticing how our children are finally now able to go back outside. Many of them are able to go to school, see their friends, and just the joy on their faces, the experiences they're having, the positive way in which their lives are now becoming enriched again in the same fashion they were post pre-pandemic. So you are correct that as we get older, we do appreciate vicariously that type of joy. For all of the folks out there that are planning a vacation, though, I know one of the things that's first and foremost on their minds was how can we plan a travel vacation where, God forbid, something closed down again, like is happening in Europe? We would be able to either get our money back or change our plans. But Larry, I think that the news is carrying some more ominous news about how exactly you may be able to travel to your destination of choice depending on whether or not you've had a vaccine.
Right. There's something new that people have probably been hearing about in the news, especially you'll pick it up on the internet, called the vaccine passport. So in New York, Governor Cuomo has given a contract to IBM to come up with a vaccine passport system. Rutgers University in New Jersey next fall will not let students into classes without a vaccine certificate. And there's a bunch of power-hungry doctors that published this in the Wall Street Journal that want to come up with a digital rapid detection system. Now, perhaps even more ominous than that, the Biden administration is looking into requiring vaccine passports. Yet, no voter ID required, but you better have that vaccine passport handy. And but to the credit of Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida, he has said he's issued an executive order banning vaccine passports. However, on the other side, the former president of Planned Parenthood, her name is Dr. Lena Wynn, wants the Biden administration to make our freedoms as we open up contingent on us having a vaccine passport. And she said, if you just totally reopen now, what's the carrot going to be to get people to take these vaccines? And so it's kind of worrisome.
Well, here's a couple of questions about that, Larry. So the Biden administration has said we're going to go hands off and we're going to let the private industry regulate and decide whether or not they want vaccine passports. Many of the industries and businesses that have mentioned vaccine passports also include a negative test. As they have done traditionally, they also embrace the idea of medical exemptions, religious exemptions. They usually say medical and legal. So it's not so much a vaccine passport, but they are a lot of industries. And again, there are exceptions to these rules. And Larry, news breaks every day that contradicts or corroborates some of what we've heard anecdotally. But the idea appears to be circulating around this, we'll call it a vaccine, but of course, we don't really have a dead COVID virus. That's not exactly the way these vaccines work, although we call them that for ease. But is there any talk about requiring FDA approval, not emergency use as we have now, but is there any talk about postponing the requirement of vaccination until we actually have an FDA approved real vaccine or what? I know there's dueling narratives that surround the efficacy, whether it's a good idea, but more importantly, the requirement. I mean, what's the latest on that?
Well, as far as the FDA approval, I'm not sure what they're doing there. I would imagine they're definitely working on getting FDA approval since they're trying to mandate it for everybody. But vaccine passports on its surface sounds like a great thing. But the problem with it, Wendy, is you don't have a choice. And if once they get this going, they're going to be able, according to Naomi Wolf, who's the author of many books, including one is called The End of America. And I think she's kind of on the liberal spectrum of things, so I probably wouldn't agree with her on everything, but on this I totally do. And what she says, once you get that requirement for a vaccine passport, they will be able to load other functionalities onto that platform. For example, your PayPal account. Networks can be brought up into it. It'll have geolocation capability, perhaps, your credit history, your medical history. Israel already has this. And what it works out to be is a two-tiered system where you have people that have the passport and they can go anywhere, they can do anything. And the people that are kind of resisting, they're kind of like they're stuck. They can't do certain things, and it can only get worse. And according to Naomi Wolf, this is kind of end of life as we know it if this gets through. So we have to push back on this now.
You know what's interesting about the whole discussion is, we have so much in common regarding the end goal. Everybody wants a safe and effective way to keep each other healthy. The way in which we go about that and the paths that different people believe are best to achieve that seems to be really fodder for a lot of argument nowadays. But you have to believe that's out of fear for a large extent of the population, given how fast these vaccines were developed, given how thrilled people are to be taking them, but then only to find out that they may only be effective for a certain amount of months. And then, of course, there's the idea of, well, gosh, do I have to go in every 6 months now? What about the variants? It seems like there's a lot of unanswered questions. But, Larry, I'm going to end on a high note here because we are united in our respect and care for each other as we move forward, trying to find a common solution that will be helpful, that will be easy, and that will be available to everybody that would like to take advantage of it. We need to take a short commercial break, but don't touch that dial because when you return, given that tomorrow is Easter Sunday, you're going to meet one of the top defenders of religious freedom and families in our nation today. You are listening to Today with Dr. Wendy. We'll be back in a flash. Welcome back to Today with Dr. Wendy. I'm Wendy Patrick. Our guest tonight is a name you will no doubt recognize. He is in the trenches doing the Lord's work. His organization is dedicated to fighting back in the courts against the constant attack that they feel they are often under in terms of religious freedoms. He's also a dear friend who I have known for years, and he has his own radio show too that is much widely known than mine. So he is really a guru and a veteran on the air, both radio and television. So it's a blessing to welcome to the show today. Larry, who do we have on the line?
Yes, Brad Dacus is an attorney and a tireless champion of religious liberty and defender of the family. Brad is founder and president of Pacific Justice Institute, or PJI. And PGI has a network of hundreds of volunteer affiliate attorneys, and it handles more cases on the West Coast than any other legal nonprofit organization in regards to religious liberty and protecting the family. Brad can be watched daily, Monday through Friday, on Brad Dacus Live on hischannel.com, and can be heard weekly on the Dacus Report on more than 514 radio stations across the country. He's appeared on CBS Evening News, CNN, Dateline, NBC, Good Morning America, MSNBC, NBC News, and The Today Show, and he's been on numerous times on Fox News. Welcome to the show, Brad.
I didn't know when that list was going to end. I almost felt like saying, Larry, do you want to find a network he hasn't been on? But then I was afraid we wouldn't be able to. Brad, you've done such good work for so many years, and I followed all of what you've been doing. And it's because it's Easter tomorrow. It's a great day to have you on talking about churches and openings and religious freedoms and everything else. But one thing I know our listeners would love to hear is, so Pacific Justice Institute has been wildly successful over the years. What in the world ever prompted you to start the organization that has just exploded with success in the last decade?
Hey, Brad, I understand under the latest Supreme Court ruling, churches can now reopen their doors for indoor services, but I think they're still held back as far as the number of people allowed. What's the status of church lockdowns today, considering tomorrow's Easter Sunday?
Yeah, Brad, you bring up a really great point about the civil disobedience that we've seen go on during the course of the pandemic. And obviously, some violations were more egregious than others. You had people packing into sports bars watching the Super Bowl, for example. But then you also had examples like you give, where there were churches that decided to open their doors but space everybody out, and there was no singing. Everybody was separated by plexiglass, with complaints. But Pacific Justice Center really has taken a lot of these cases and been willing to step into the trenches and defend some of these smaller churches. One question I always had as we move along is, jurisdiction wise and whether a case is right to continue litigating. If you bring a case on behalf of a church, for example, that is at 25% occupancy, and then the county comes into the orange tier, maybe, or even less restrictive than that, and all of a sudden everything's open, do you continue to litigate that case, or does something become moot once we sort of achieve societally what you are seeking to achieve legally?
Oh, hey, Brad, I know that besides churches, you also defend parents and families and children. A lot of people are concerned about the new curriculum they're offering in the public schools, and you have something called church homeschool co-ops. What are those?
Yeah, Brad, it's obviously, we want to just promote love for all of our children, and we want to make sure that they are healthy and safe, and that we as Christians, we love everyone, regardless of lifestyle choice. What we're talking about is curriculum is very different in different areas, and that's sort of what bothers us sometimes, depending on what they're learning and how young they are when they're learning it. But we only have a minute left, so let me just say your website that you gave us is also pacificjustice.org, and I would just encourage any of our listeners to go there if they want more information or to learn more about you. So thank you so much, Brad, for joining the show and for really stimulating the conversation. I'll tell you, there's never a dull moment with the type of work you do. And we would like to thank you so much for joining us. We would like to wish our listeners a wonderful, safe weekend. Happy Easter weekend. And please join us next week for more of Today with Dr. Wendy, Headlines with a Silver Lining. Have a great week, and God bless you.